Commander Jack Knuckles O'Malley had a problem with doors. Not the normal kind of problem where you can't get them open, quite the opposite. He kept accidentally ripping them off their hinges. This was his third write-up this month from the Galactic Council's maintenance department, and frankly he was getting tired of apologizing for his excessive application of force to standard-issue portal mechanisms. Look, he explained to the floating gelatinous blob that served as his immediate supervisor, I barely touched it. How was I supposed to know the quantum-reinforced alloy couldn't handle a gentle tug? Ambassador Ping Pong, said Gelatinous Blob, wobbled in what Jack had come to recognize as exasperated amusement. The ambassador's official name was something like the most honorable representative of the spheroid collective, 15th resonance of the Great Wobbling. But after watching him bounce off the walls during their first diplomatic meeting, Jack had dubbed him Ping Pong. The nickname stuck, much to the horror of the more traditional council members. Commander O'Malley, Ping Pong's universal translator, warbled. When the engineering specs say maximum force tolerance 2000 quantum units, they don't mean that as a personal challenge. Jack scratched his head, leaving a small smudge of engineering grease on his forehead. In my defense, I was trying to be gentle. Back on my space farm, we had to kick the fusion tractor at least twice as hard to get it started in the morning. A passing group of arachnoid delegates skittered to the other side of the corridor, their 8 eyes wide with terror. Jack smiled and waved, which only made them move faster, leaving behind what appeared to be stress-molted exoskeletons. That's exactly the kind of thing we need to work on, Ping Pong wobbled. The council is still adjusting to having a... What's the term they use in the medical reports? Ah yes, a terrifying death world specimen as our chief of maintenance. I prefer gravity-enhanced engineering enthusiast, Jack grinned, pulling out a protein bar that, according to the warning label, contained enough calories to power a small star system. He took a bite, causing several nearby energy beings to flicker in distress. The truth was, Jack loved his job aboard the Galactic Council's flagship. Sure, most of the other species treated him like he was made of antimatter and nightmares, but there was something satisfying about being the only engineer who could actually lift the replacement parts for the quantum drive. Plus, watching Dr. Squish, the resident xenobiologist, have a minor meltdown every time he casually repositioned a immovable power core was endlessly entertaining. Speaking of Dr. Squish, the nervous molluscoid came rushing down the corridor, his tentacles wrapped around what appeared to be 17 different scanning devices. Commander O'Malley, your biochemical readings are off the charts again. Did you perhaps engage in what you humans call a light workout this morning? Nah, Doc. Just helped move some spare graviton stabilizers to Deck 47, only about 20 of them. Dr. Squish's color shifted from its usual pleasant purple to an alarmed mauve. Each of those stabilizers masses approximately 400 kilograms. The combined weight would be several of his scanners started smoking. It's leg day, Jack shrugged, finishing his protein bar. Ping Pong intervened before Dr. Squish could blow another set of expensive monitoring equipment. Perhaps we should focus on preparing for today's diplomatic reception? The Regellian delegation will be arriving shortly, and they're rather particular about their security protocols. Oh yeah, the guys with the fancy armor, Jack nodded. Read about them in the briefing, something about biomechanical suits they claim are unbreakable. Indeed, Ping Pong wobbled nervously. They're quite proud of their defensive technology. It would be diplomatic if we could avoid any incidents involving accidental demonstrations of human strength. Hey, when have I ever caused a diplomatic incident? Both Ping Pong and Dr. Squish simultaneously produced lists from various appendages. Okay, Jack held up his hands in surrender. But that thing with the Centaurian ambassador's indestructible ceremonial staff was totally an accident. How was I supposed to know it would snap like that? And the Venusian Crystal Palace situation, that was just physics. Really? Anyone could have calculated that the resonant frequency of my humming would shatter those walls. Dr. Squish's scanners began to emit a high-pitched whine. Commander, your casual dismissal of events that have caused multiple species to revise their understanding of material science is precisely why we need to be cautious today. The Regellians are sensitive about their technological superiority. Relax. Doc Jack smiled, absently crushing the protein bar wrapper into a dense ball that probably violated several laws of physics. I'll be on my best behavior. What's the worst that could happen? Ping Pong's gelatinous form shuddered in what might have been a sigh. Somehow, Commander, it's always after you ask that question that I end up having to file the really interesting reports. The Rigelian diplomatic delegation arrived exactly on schedule, because being precisely on time was apparently the seventh most important thing in their culture, right after maintaining proper posture, and just before polishing one's armor to a mathematically perfect shine. They marched into the council's grand reception hall in perfect formation, their biomechanical armor gleaming under the artificial starlight, each step accompanied by a synchronized whir click that probably took years to master. Jack watched from his designated position near the back of the hall, trying his best to look non-threatening, which for a human aboard a space station full of lighter gravity species was about as effective as a black hole trying to look diet-friendly. Remember, Ping Pong wobbled quietly beside him, no touching anything, no commenting on their armor, and absolutely no demonstrations of human physical capabilities. "You know," Jack whispered back, "when you give me lists of things not to do, it just makes me really want to do them." "That's because you're what the xenopsychologists call a trouble magnet with opposable thumbs." Before Jack could defend his species' evolutionary advantages, General Click-Clank of the Rigelian Empire stepped forward. The general's armor was, if possible, even shinier than his subordinates, decorated with what appeared to be every metal the Rigelian Empire had ever invented, and probably a few they'd made up just for the occasion. "Esteemed members of the Galactic Council," Click-Clank's voice resonated through his armor speakers with carefully modulated authority, "we come bearing the greetings of the Rigelian Empire, secure in the knowledge that our superior defensive technology ensures peaceful negotiations." Dr. Squish, who had somehow materialized next to Jack with a new array of scanning devices, muttered, "Fascinating. Their armor appears to be composed of self-repairing nanomatrices with quantum-locked molecular bonds, theoretically indestructible by any known force in the galaxy." "Any known force?" Jack mused, earning him simultaneous glares from both Ping Pong and Dr. Squish. General Click-Clank continued his speech, which seemed to be less about diplomacy and more about how amazing Rigelian technology was. "Our biomechanical armor represents the pinnacle of defensive evolution, far superior to the primitive biological adaptations of lesser species. For instance, I understand there's a representative of the human death world present." Every eye, optical sensor, and sensory appendage in the room turned toward Jack, who had chosen that exact moment to scratch his nose. Several delegates flinched. "Ah yes," Click-Clank's tone managed to convey several metric tons of condescension through the universal translator. "The beings who rely on their dense musculature and heavy bone structure. How quaint. On Rigel we evolved beyond the need for such crude biological solutions." Jack felt his eyebrows rising. Next to him, Ping Pong began stress wobbling at frequencies that made nearby crystal glasses vibrate. In fact, the general continued, apparently immune to the growing tension in the room, "Our latest Mark VII combat armor can withstand forces that would reduce your terrestrial steel to atoms. The perfect fusion of biology and machinery, completely impervious to physical damage." "That's a bold claim," Jack said, his voice carrying easily across the suddenly very quiet reception hall. Dr. Squish's tentacles began typing frantically on multiple emergency communication devices. Click-Clank turned toward Jack with the smooth precision of someone who practiced dramatic turns in front of a mirror. "Bold? It is merely fact. Our armor has been tested against every weapon system in the known galaxy. Nothing can breach it." "Funny thing about tests," Jack smiled, pushing himself off the wall he'd been leaning against. Several nearby delegates took precautionary steps backward. "Sometimes you don't account for all the variables." Commander O'Malley, Ping Pong interrupted, his usual bouncy tone taking on a slight edge of panic. "Perhaps this isn't the best time for—" No, Click-Clank raised a mechanically augmented hand. "Let the Death Worlder speak. I'm curious to hear what insight a maintenance engineer might have regarding our superior technology." "Well," Jack said, casually accepting a drink from a serving drone and draining it in one go, "where I come from, we have a saying, it ain't unbreakable till a human's tried to break it." The room went so quiet you could hear Dr. Squish's color changing to alarmed chartreuse. Click-Clank's armor whirred as he processed this statement. "Are you suggesting, human, that you could damage our ceremonial combat armor? The same armor that withstood direct hits from Centaurian plasma cannons?" "Suggesting," Jack grinned. "Nah. Just making conversation, though if you're so confident you could always prove it with a little demonstration." The words hung in the air like a pending gravitational disaster. Ping Pong's gelatinous form had nearly achieved perfect spherical density from stress, and Dr. Squish was simultaneously recording on so many devices he looked like the center of a small electronic solar system. General Click-Clank's armor produced what might have been a laugh. If laughs were designed by a committee of particularly smug engineers. Very well, Deathworlder. Let us put this matter to rest with a proper demonstration. I assume you'll want to use some sort of primitive tool or weapon. Jack looked down at his hands, flexing them thoughtfully. Nah, he said with a smile that made several energy beings dim their manifestations, I reckon these will do just fine. The grand reception hall had been hastily rearranged into something resembling a demonstration arena, with delegates forming a wide circle around the central space. The width of this circle seemed directly proportional to their species' previous experience with humans, with the arachnoids setting a new record for how far back you could stand while technically still being in the same room. Before we begin, General Click-Clank announced, his armor gleaming under the artificial lights, perhaps we should allow other species to attempt to damage our armor. It will provide a useful baseline for comparison. Jack leaned against a support pillar, pulled out another one of his civilization-powering protein bars, and nodded. Sure thing. Ladies, gentlemen, and various other configurations of sentient being, have at it. What followed was possibly the most entertaining 15 minutes in Galactic Council history. The Centaurians went first, bringing out their newest plasma cannon, which they'd presumably named something like the absolutely final word in weapon technology, this time we mean it. The resulting light show was spectacular, though the only damage done was to everyone's retinal implants and the Centaurian representative's pride. Next came the quantum harmonics, energy beings who attempted to destabilize the armor's molecular structure through what they called aggressive frequency manipulation, but what looked to everyone else like very angry interpretive dancing. The armor remained unimpressed. The Graviton Collective tried increasing the local gravity field by a factor of 1,000. This primarily resulted in everyone having really bad hair days, except for Ping Pong, who briefly achieved perfect spherical symmetry and had to be rolled back into position. Fascinating, Dr. Squish commented, his tentacles flying over his recording devices. The armor appears to be adapting to each attack, analyzing and incorporating countermeasures in real time. It's actually becoming stronger with each attempt. That's the beauty of our biomechanical systems, Click-Clank preened. They learn and evolve. By now, this armor unit has developed defenses against every known weapon in the galaxy. Neat, Jack said, finishing his protein bar and carefully folding the wrapper into an origami swan that somehow violated several laws of physics. My turn. Ah yes, the human approach. Brute force against advanced technology. Please, demonstrate the futility of your primitive methods. Jack pushed himself off the pillar, causing several nearby delegates to flinch at the casual display of muscle movement. He walked toward the center of the room, rolling his shoulders in a way that made Dr. Squish's scanners emit concerning beeps. Commander O'Malley. Ping Pong wobbled urgently, as your immediate supervisor and friend. I feel compelled to remind you about the incident report I'm going to have to file after this. Please try to keep property damage to a minimum. The paperwork for human-induced structural failures is already 3 quantum data cores thick. Don't worry, Jack grinned, cracking his knuckles in a way that somehow echoed ominously despite the room's sound dampeners. I'll be gentle. Dr. Squish's color shifted to what humans might call, oh no, not again purple, as he activated his highest resolution scanners. For the record, Commander, your current biometric readings are concerning. Your muscle density appears to be approaching levels typically associated with compact stellar objects. Now then, General Click-Clank's smug voice cut through the murmurs of the crowd. Shall we proceed with this demonstration of human inadequacy? I assure you, our armor can withstand forces far beyond your biological capabilities. Jack walked a slow circle around the general, studying the armor with the kind of casual interest that maintenance engineers usually reserve for particularly interesting mechanical failures. Pretty design, he commented. All those fancy quantum whatsits and nano thingies. Must have taken years to develop. Generations of Virgilian scientists contributed to its perfection, Click-Clank declared proudly. Every component has been tested to withstand forces that would tear apart lesser materials. Jack nodded, still circling. Quick question, did any of those scientists ever visit Earth? Visit a death world, Click-Clank scoffed. Hardly necessary. Our computational models accounted for all possible scenarios. All possible scenarios? Jack stopped circling and flexed his hands. Tell me something, General. In all those fancy calculations, did anyone factor in what happens when a human decides to get really, properly creative with their problem solving? Before Click-Clank could respond, Jack reached out and placed his hand on the armor's shoulder joint. Because let me tell you about this one time I had to fix a fusion tractor with nothing but a wrench and some good old-fashioned human ingenuity. Dr. Squish's scanners began emitting smoke, and Ping Pong achieved a shade of nervous transparency previously thought impossible for his species. The assembled delegates held their various forms of breath, knowing they were about to witness either a historic diplomatic incident or the most expensive practical joke in galactic history. As it turned out, they were about to witness both. There's an old saying on Earth that a machine can only be truly fixed by someone who really understands it. Jack O'Malley understood machines the way most people understand their favorite songs, not just the notes but the spaces between them. Right now he was looking at the Regellian armor like a mechanic sizing up an engine that needed a very specific kind of persuasion. You see, Jack explained conversationally, his hand still resting on the armor's shoulder joint. Back on my family's space farm, we had this ancient fusion tractor. Beautiful piece of machinery, but stubborn as a quantum-locked mule. One day, it locked up right in the middle of harvest season. Is this primitive attempt at storytelling supposed to distract from your inability to damage our superior technology? Click Clank interrupted, his smugness reaching levels that probably violated several local ordinances. Nah, Jack smiled. Just giving your armor's adaptive systems time to analyze what they think is about to happen. His grip tightened slightly, causing several of Dr. Squish's scanners to start playing funeral dirges. Because right about now, they're probably calculating all sorts of scenarios based on standard force applications, leverage ratios, and mechanical stress points. Of course, the general preened. Our systems can predict and counter any possible attack vector. That's the thing about humans, though. Jack's grin widened. We're real good at doing the impossible. Like that fusion tractor? Everyone said it couldn't be fixed without replacing the whole drive core. But sometimes you just need to know exactly where to push. What happened next occurred so quickly that several species' sensory organs needed to replay it multiple times to process it. Jack's hand moved in what appeared to be 3 different directions simultaneously, applying pressure in a way that somehow violated both physics and common sense. There was a sound like reality hiccuping, and suddenly the general's left arm armor was no longer attached to the rest of him. The silence that followed was so profound that you could hear Dr. Squish's color changing. Fascinating. Dr. Squish broke the silence, his tentacles flying over his smoking scanners. The human appeared to apply force along multiple dimensional vectors simultaneously, creating a localized breakdown of the armor's quantum field matrix through. Actually, I have no idea how he did that. Commander, could you possibly demonstrate that again for the scientific record? Impossible. Click Clank's voice modulator hit notes previously achievable only by panicked Centaurian opera singers. Our armor is designed to withstand forces exceeding the gravitational pull of a small star. Yeah, Jack nodded, casually examining the detached piece of armor. But did you design it to withstand good old-fashioned human problem-solving? Because let me tell you about this other time on the farm when our artificial gravity generator went haywire. No. Click Clank took a step backward, his armor's servos whirring in distress. No more farm stories. This is clearly some form of technological sabotage. Our armor cannot be defeated by mere organic strength. You know what your armor reminds me of? Jack continued, now running his fingers along the quantum-reinforced chest plate. This one time we had this storage pod that got vacuum sealed wrong. Everyone said it was impossible to open without specialized equipment. The assembled delegates watched in horrified fascination as Jack proceeded to demonstrate exactly why humans had earned their reputation as death-worlders. With movements that seemed to casually ignore the laws of physics, he systematically reduced the supposedly indestructible armor to its component parts, all while maintaining a running commentary about various mechanical mishaps from his farming days. And then there was this incident with the magnetic containment field. Jack chatted away, casually peeling back another layer of quantum-hardened alloy. You'd be amazed what you can fix with a rubber mallet and some creative thinking. By now, General Click Clank was making sounds that suggested his vocal processors were trying to express emotions that hadn't been invented yet. What remained of his armor looked like it had been through a very localized apocalypse, with pieces scattered around in a pattern that Dr. Squish was frantically trying to analyze with his few remaining functional scanners. Commander Ping Pong wobbled nervously. I believe you've made your point. Perhaps we could proceed with the actual diplomatic negotiations. Just a sec. Jack held up a finger. There's this one last trick I learned from dealing with stuck airlock doors. The final dismantling of the Regellian armor happened with such casual efficiency that several watching engineers had to be treated for professional crisis. Jack stepped back from his work, brushing some non-existent dust from his hands, leaving General Click-Clank standing in what appeared to be the galaxy's most expensive pile of spare parts. So Jack said cheerfully, "Anyone want to hear about the time I had to recalibrate our quantum positioning system with nothing but a paperclip and some duct tape?" The collective groan from the assembled delegates was interrupted by Dr. Squish's last functioning scanner finally giving up and exploding in a shower of sparks. "Commander." The xenobiologist's voice quivered with barely contained scientific excitement. "I believe you've just violated approximately 17 laws of physics, 32 engineering principles, and possibly several rules of reality itself." Nah, Jack shrugged. "Just applied some good old-fashioned human ingenuity. Speaking of which, anyone got a snack? All this impossible physics works up an appetite." The Galactic Council's emergency session following the incident, which was already being capitalized in official documents, had to be moved to a larger chamber to accommodate all the species who suddenly felt a pressing need to revise their diplomatic stances regarding humans. The original conference room was deemed too small to contain both the crowd and the existential crisis currently sweeping through the assembled delegates. General Click-Clank sat in what remained of his armor, which now resembled a very expensive modern art installation titled Hubris Deconstructed. The Regellian delegation huddled around him, frantically updating their diplomatic protocols and possibly their entire technological development roadmap. "Let me make sure I understand this correctly," the chief counselor, a being of pure energy who was currently flickering in distress, addressed the assembly. "A human maintenance engineer disabled our most advanced allies' supposedly indestructible combat armor, while telling stories about farm equipment." "Actually, Dr. Squish interjected, his tentacles still typing furiously on replacement scanners. "According to my analysis, Commander O'Malley didn't just disable the armor. He systematically deconstructed it in a way that defies our current understanding of materials science. I've had to invent 3 new branches of physics just to begin explaining it. I'm calling one of them O'Malley's uncertainty principle. If a human says they can break it, they probably can." Ping Pong, who had finally regained his normal bouncy consistency, wobbled supportively next to Jack. In Commander O'Malley's defense, he did try to warn them. Multiple times, with increasingly relevant anecdotes about agricultural machinery. The stories were the worst part. General Click-Clank's voice modulator cracked. "Do you know what it's like to have your most advanced defensive technology casually dismantled while someone compares it to a stuck tractor door? The psychological damage alone." "Hey now," Jack spoke up from his corner, where he was busy constructing an improbable tower out of empty protein bar wrappers. "Those stories were educational. You never know when you might need to know how to unstick a quantum-locked grain silo with nothing but a rubber band and optimism." Several Regellian engineers who had been examining the scattered pieces of armor looked up with sudden interest, causing their supervisors immediate concern. "This is unprecedented," the chief counselor continued, energy form pulsing with bureaucratic distress. "The diplomatic implications alone. Dr. Squish, what exactly are we dealing with here? In scientific terms." Dr. Squish changed colors several times before responding. "Well, based on my preliminary analysis, humans appear to possess what I'm terming selective physics compliance. They seem to treat our most fundamental universal constants as helpful suggestions. Commander O'Malley's approach to the armor combined force applications that should have been mutually exclusive with what appears to be a completely instinctive understanding of multidimensional stress points. Also, he did it all while maintaining a blood sugar level that should technically have turned him into a small fusion reactor." In my defense, Jack raised a hand, "I hadn't had lunch yet. You should see what we can do after a proper meal." The room collectively shuddered. "The real question," Ping Pong bounced thoughtfully, "is how this affects our ongoing diplomatic relations. The Regellian Empire's military superiority was a cornerstone of their diplomatic leverage." Leverage. General Click-Clank's vocal processors hit a new octave of distress. "What leverage? Our most advanced combat system was just turned into modern art by someone who keeps comparing advanced technology to farm equipment. Do you have any idea what this will do to our military funding, our technological superiority, our merchandising deals?" "You know," Jack mused, still building his wrapper tower, "this reminds me of this one time when our atmospheric processor got stuck in reverse." "No more farm stories," the entire assembly shouted in unified horror. Dr. Squish, however, had pulled out yet another scanner. "Actually, Commander, please continue. I'm developing a new theory about the relationship between human anecdotal physics and fundamental force interactions." Perhaps the chief counselor flickered diplomatically, "We should focus on the immediate consequences. The Regellian Empire's position in the council. We'll need significant revision," Ping Pong finished, bouncing slightly higher with what might have been suppressed amusement, along with everyone else's threat assessment protocols. Though I should point out that Commander O'Malley did file all the proper paperwork for an equipment maintenance demonstration. I did. Jack looked up in surprise. No, but I took the liberty of backdating it about 10 minutes after the incident. I've learned to be proactive about human-related documentation. This is a disaster, Click Clank moaned, a piece of his armor choosing that moment to fall off dramatically. Generations of Virgilian technological development, undone by a maintenance engineer with farming experience and an unhealthy protein intake. If it helps, Jack offered cheerfully, I could show your engineers how I did it. It's really just a matter of understanding where to push and when to tell a really distracting story about agricultural equipment. The look of horror on the faces of the Virgilian diplomatic corps suggested that this might not, in fact, help at all. The Galactic Council's official report on the incident eventually had to be stored on its own quantum server, largely due to Dr. Squish's extensive appendices on human-induced physics abnormalities and the statistical improbability of farm equipment analogies. The executive summary, however, was remarkably concise. Don't dare humans to break things. They will break them. Creatively. One standard galactic week later, Jack found himself in the Council's newly reinforced recreational area, sharing a drink with Ping Pong. The beverage in question was something the station's synthesizers had created specifically for humans, labeled quantum coolant now with extra physics defiance. You know, Ping Pong wobbled conversationally. The diplomatic fallout hasn't been entirely negative. The Rigelians have proposed a joint research initiative with Earth's engineers. Something about combining advanced theoretical knowledge with practical agricultural experience. That's nice, Jack nodded, taking a sip of his drink, which appeared to be violating several conservation laws. Though I heard their first requirement is that all human consultants have to tell at least one farming story per session. Indeed. Dr. Squish's latest paper suggests that human anecdotes about mechanical repairs might actually alter local probability fields. He's calling it narrative-enhanced engineering and has requested funding for a dedicated research facility, with a farm attached. Speaking of Dr. Squish, Jack grinned. How's his new project going? You mean the one where he's trying to quantify human strength using only variables that give his equipment existential crises? The mathematics department has started a support group. Their conversation was interrupted by a junior diplomat rushing up to their table, looking slightly panicked. Commander O'Malley. We have a situation with the new Centaurian quantum-locked security doors. They're stuck, and the manufacturer says they're completely impossible to open without the proper codes, which we've somehow lost, and there's a very important delegation trapped behind them. Impossible. Jack's eyes lit up as he stood, cracking his knuckles. You know, this reminds me of this one time back on the farm when our molecular recycler got jammed. I'll start the incident report. Ping Pong sighed, already pulling up a holographic form. Would you like me to check the box for physics-defying solution involving agricultural analogies now, or should I wait for the actual property damage? Better check it now, Jack called over his shoulder as he followed the desperate diplomat. And maybe add a footnote about creative problem-solving techniques. You know, for scientific posterity. Speaking of scientific posterity, Doctor. Squish's voice came from somewhere under the table, where he'd apparently been taking readings the entire time. I finally finished calculating the exact force you used to dismantle the Rigelian armor. According to my results, it should have been physically impossible by approximately 7 orders of magnitude. Yeah, Jack grinned, but you should have seen what we had to do to fix the gravity wells back home when they got clogged with space corn. Now that was impossible. Dr. Squish's newest scanner immediately shorted out in protest. As Jack walked away, Ping Pong began filling out what had become his favorite form: incident report, human engineering solutions farm story variant. He'd had it specially designed after the incident, complete with checkboxes for number of physical laws violated, and agricultural equipment referenced. In the distance, they could hear Jack's voice. You see, the thing about stuck doors is, they're a lot like that time our quantum harvester decided to fold space instead of the laundry. The sound of expensive security systems giving way to human ingenuity echoed through the station, followed by the now familiar thud of Dr. Squish's scientific equipment giving up on reality. Just another day in galactic diplomacy. In the weeks that followed, the Galactic Council made several notable policy changes. All indestructible technology demonstrations were required to be pre-tested by at least one human maintenance engineer. The phrase "completely impossible" was officially classified as a human motivational statement. Agricultural analogies were added to the list of recognized diplomatic techniques. Dr. Squish received emergency funding for physics-resistant scanning equipment. The Rigelian Empire began secretly recruiting Earth farmers as military consultants. And somewhere in the vast expanse of space, a maintenance engineer named Jack O'Malley continued to fix impossible problems with nothing but human ingenuity and an inexhaustible supply of farming stories, while various species updated their understanding of what indestructible really meant when humans were involved. After all, as the new Galactic Council saying went, if a human can't fix it, it's probably not broken enough yet.